Welcome to Horse First. This is a podcast about beginning with the horse, about paying attention before we explain and listening before we decide what something means, which, as it turns out, takes a bit more skill than it sounds. It's not about blame. It's not about being right. It's about widening the view and learning to carry responsibility without hardening. I'm Lockie Phillips. This is a space for curiosity, steady practice, and skill that keeps the horse at the center. Let's begin. Well, I've got Kat Lee with me once again on the podcast, but podcast in a new form. Hello, Kat.
Hello, Lockie.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very happy to hang out with you today.
Very happy to hang out again. Always happy to hang with you. So today we're meeting to discuss the Chinese calendar and what everyone's been talking about at the turn of 2025 into 2026, especially at the top end of 2026, is this shift from the year of the snake or the wood snake. Was it the wood snake?
Yes, it was the yin wood snake, and we're moving into the yang fire horse.
Beautiful.
Very different energies. Yeah.
And you put out an open call on your socials, like, anyone want to have me on the pod? I need to geek out about this. And I was like, yeah, damn, let's do it. Let's have you back. But before we start geeking out about this, I want to have you let our listeners know, what kind of authority figure are you on the Chinese calendar? What kind of competency and knowledge have you explored in your life around this subject?
Yeah. So I spent the majority of my career life as an acupuncturist. And I think that acupuncture has been, I'm going to call it cannibalized by the Western medical system. But at its core, there's a spiritual, yeah, that's a whole other conversation, Lucky.
Yeah.
But at its core, acupuncture has a very spiritual basis that is rooted in Taoist medicine. And that is the thing that I can nerd out about, geek out about, and just fall down the rabbit hole about. For me, it's less about what kind of point is going to fix your headache and more about how are you living in your seasons? How are you living in relationship to nature? How are you living in community with all of the living and non-being entities that are around you? And that informs your health and well-being. And so I have now exited that career. I just recently took a job as a practice manager of a vet clinic, but I will always, this is just the fabric of who I am and how I view the world and how I sort of exist in all of my relationships: horses, humans, creatures, dogs, all of the above, rocks, mountains. So that's kind of sort of my framework of where my geeky nerdiness about, I like to call it the lunar calendar, because there are lots of communities around the world, not just the Chinese people who follow this. And so because it is based on a lunar cycle versus our Gregorian calendar is based around the solar cycle, it just has a different sort of framework to it. So I don't know how you feel, but January 1st does never feels like, yay, let's go sort of energy for me. It comes a bit later. And for me, that does tend to line up with the lunar cycle and the new year that shifts. So it typically ends up being late January, early February-ish. So this year it is mid-February. So that's where our shift is going to happen.
Amazing. As we speak right now, I had acupuncture as of a week ago here in Spain with a very nice, highly qualified osteopath and traditional Chinese medicine doctor and practitioner, where she pinned me and then hooked me up and gently electrocuted me for an hour and kept coming in every 10 minutes to say, do you want some more? And sometimes the answer was, yeah, go for it. And sometimes it was like, no, not ready. Dealing with it. I was
Yeah.
dealing with a deep piriformis cramp that was
Ooh.
squeezing on my sciatic nerve.
Yeah.
My mum was here at the time. She said, Lockie, you looked like you were giving birth, because it was like a deep
Oh.
cramp and extremely painful. I've got a very high pain tolerance, and it was almost making me pass out. It was
Yeah.
really bad. So I took
Yeah.
myself into the acupuncturist, and as she was putting the needles in, my body jumped like a live wire.
Mhm.
And afterwards, she showed me the needles, and in Spanish, I believe she said that these needles are smaller than the hair on a child's head, and you are
Yeah.
extremely sensitive to them. You should not be this sensitive to this needle. You should barely feel it. And I was jumping and bracing even before the needles made contact with my skin. My body was so awful.
Yeah.
And then later that afternoon, after the treatment, the cramp got much, much worse.
Hmm.
Much, much worse. My prescribed anti-inflammatories and painkillers weren't touching it at all. Managed to drift off into an uneasy sleep. Woke up in the morning, pain was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gone.
And
Gone.
that's the beautiful thing about acupuncture is it's such a versatile tool. So we can use it for things like physical ailments like you just experienced, and your body was cramping up around something and was able to release it.
It's not just
Um,
physical.
yeah.
It's never
Yeah.
just, and I know that. I
Yeah.
know that. I would not
Yeah.
share that here in this platform and say, no, I'm fine. It's just physical. No,
Right.
like literally my forward momentum was being paused. Stop
Yeah.
moving forward. Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We will literally cramp you to
And
death if you keep trying to
yeah.
move forward right now.
Yeah. Our bodies are the storytellers of our lives, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it is in constant communication with you, is trying to communicate with you all the time. And it's about how do we slow down and listen? How do we pay attention to these signs? Um, the form of acupuncture that I used to practice really accounted for both the physical and the emotionality. And so, if you were my client, I would be doing needles along the muscle groups that you were, experiencing that cramping. But I would also be asking you about, like, hey, how are you moving forward in your life? Your body's literally telling you to stop. And we could have all sorts of conversations about that. And then I would also add in sort of spirit-based points um,
Beautiful.
that would help support that process. But yeah, that's a career, that's a past life that I'm very, very happy
Is behind
was a
you.
big. It's behind me, and it's still like I still feel like I practice Taoist medicine
Mm-hmm.
without the needles,
Mm-hmm.
just in how I view the world and just in how I interact with the
That's right.
world.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, like at this time in my life, I'm being called to deep presence awareness, attention, and stillness to what's right here, right now, happening right now before my eyes with the
Mhm.
people who are right in front of me. I'm
Yeah.
being caused to not move forward, not because moving forward is bad, but because the rapport building that's happening right now in my life is a potentially life-changing force. And so I'm
Hmm.
being forced to stand still while that happens
Yeah.
so I can be seen. And it's really, really beautiful and nice, actually. And a hard left turn for those of you who don't know, Kat is a horse person. You're also a client of mine. I work with you
Hmm.
in your voice. And you describe yourself as a beginner with horses, and maybe on some aspects to a technical capacity you are. But I've said this on our previous episode, and I've said this to you many times. I say it again. From the beginning, your nervous system literacy and whole human embodiment, your steadiness, has allowed you to step into an advanced skill set with difficult horses from the very, very beginning, in every way. So that's really exciting for me as a practitioner in the field with horses, to see
Hmm.
someone who declares himself, like in terms of time and experience, a practical beginner with horses, develop feel and technical accuracy like you're 20, 30 years in the business in your second or third attempt at some things is super exciting. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to glaze you. I guess I am, as the kids would say. But I just want people to know who's talking about the year of the fire horse, and why should we listen to her? We need to listen
Yeah.
to Miss Kat here when
Yeah.
she discusses the year of the fire horse. So
I feel
let's
like
discuss
you've
it.
done this like 4 or 5 times now, and every time it gets a little easier to
Got it.
to
To
take
hear
it in.
and
So yeah,
receive. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I mean, a lot of that comes from my career as an acupuncturist.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's all about nervous system regulation. Everything changes when your nervous system can be in a state where you can receive and where you can understand and where you can be in appropriate relationship to the environment around you. This is not to say that you can't ever be dysregulated, because of course our nervous systems are made to be in dysregulation for survival purposes. But if you can have appropriate reactions to what's happening, then that is the key to a lot of things.
Correct.
But I want to sort of backward step into what you just said about slowing down, being intentional, pausing. There's a choosiness that I'm hearing here. Um, and to me, this is that cuspy energy between the year of the yin wood snake and the year of the yang fire horse. So when I think about yin and yang, there's the yin is the darkness, it's the stillness, it's the sometimes chaotic places that we go to, that we need to go to in order to find our intentionality.
Lilith.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then yang, I think of that as action and momentum and purpose driven, like things that we do, but they have to act in relationship to each other, the yin and the yang. And so yin holds intentionality, yang acts on intentionality. And that's kind of this place that you're in right now, is you're playing with that intentional space. How do I create that internal intention and then act upon that? What does that look like in my actions when it comes to relationships, to my business, to what I do with the animals? And so I just sort of
My
want to
land. What I do
mark
with my
that in your
land.
land.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So each year in the lunar calendar has 3 different distinctions. So yin or yang, there's an elemental distinction: wood, fire, earth, metal, or water. And then there's a animal distinction. And so as we move into I mean, we can all talk, we know what fire is, right? We all know what horses are. So I'm going to just throw this back at you. When you think about fire and horse as archetypal medicines, what words, phrases — I sort of asked you to meditate on this before we went on our call today — what words or phrases come to mind for you?
Yeah. I've got a handful, as per usual.
Mhm.
I've got an Aries sun, which is a fire sign. And I was born in 1990, which is the year of the horse. And I'm a horse person. And so I feel like fire and horse on a surface level are really, it's like stepping into a room that was ready for me. That's what it feels like. Words that came to my mind once I journaled on it a little bit. One was fierce freedom. Another was radical momentum.
Mm.
Another was uncontainable spirit.
Mm.
Another is rebellious vitality.
Love it.
Those are a few off the top of my head that I journaled on that come to mind.
Okay.
And, I could go through those 2-word descriptors and you could describe the horse or the fire as either of those words.
Yeah.
Is the horse radical or is the fire radical? Is momentum the horse or is fire the momentum? You could not argue, but because we don't need to argue, we could create these elements as either of those descriptors because there's a harmony to these descriptors.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you to just riff a little bit about fierce freedom,
Mm,
those two words, and why that feels so quintessentially fire horse for you.
mm. Well, not to put too fine a point on it, Kat, but we live in a time where we're learning that freedom is not free.
Hmm.
And it's something that we have to work for
Hmm.
and often, unfortunately, have paid for dearly, unnecessarily so, I
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
And coming down maybe not on a universal or worldly scale or international scale, but on a personal scale, I live with a kind of fierce freedom as an immigrant here in Spain. I'm not pursuant to local customs. I mean, I am, but locals understand that I have my own identity. So when I speak Spanish, there's an accent, and my accent is identity. My identity is my freedom held fiercely in the way I speak, right?
Hmm.
And I don't seek to try and learn away my accent when I'm learning to speak Spanish because my accent is
Hmm.
also my identity, and my identity
Hmm.
is related to my freedom. And at the same time, I don't live in Australia anymore. I haven't lived there for 18 years. So that's kind of fierce. It takes a
Yeah.
fierceness to step away.
Yeah.
It takes a
Yeah.
fierceness to hold at arm's length, to walk into the unknown. And horses are that way too. They often will fiercely defend their freedom violently if necessary.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
prefer not to. And fierceness shows up in many ways. It doesn't have to be the archetype of violence. Fierceness can sometimes be this horse is standing so fiercely resolute to the spot, not moving. I
Hmm.
will not be moved. And that's
Hmm.
fierce.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
requires
Absolutely.
strength,
Yeah.
physical strength, emotional strength, relational strength to be free. It's not
Hmm.
always harsh,
Hmm.
and we all know fire is fierce in a way, but fire can also be, if your wood is wet, I just got a wet delivery of wood over Christmas and we're still drying it out. It can be insipid and fickle, and it requires the right conditions. And you have to get everything in alignment, and then it will catch. Then it will take light. Then it takes over, but it will not take over until the conditions are right. It can't
Yeah.
be wet. It can't be cold. It can't be out of alignment from a fuel source or from a heat source. And then once
Yeah.
you've got a fuel source, you have to add more fuel and more fuel and more air and more heat. And then it self generates. But fire can be extremely fickle and difficult to create at its origination point once you've got it.
Hmm.
And that's kind of fierce that it's both immensely powerful and weak as well at its initiation
Hmm.
point and seasonal
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in nature.
Yeah. So I'm just going to make a couple of reflections on what you just shared
Mm,
because this is um, you're speaking quintessentially to two organs
mm,
of the fire element.
mm,
So the fire element has four organs that it represents in the human body. There is the heart and the pericardium, which are its yin organs. So that's going to be a little bit more present in the next lunar cycle.
mm,
So we're about to go into, after the fire horse, we're going into yin fire sheep. And
mm,
so heart and pericardium, which is the like sheath that surrounds and protects the heart, is going to be way more present. And so when you talk about that like fierceness, that like I am here, I am not going to be apologetic for my accent, I am going to just be myself. um, I am that horse that can stand resolutely. That to me is like art energy that
mm,
you're sort of embodying. um, and then the other two organs, which are more present this lunar cycle, is the small intestine and the triple burner.
mm,
Triple burner does not have a like Western sort of like easy translation. It is like our metabolism. I think of it as like our adrenals and our thyroid, but then also our fascia. So like think about
got it.
connection.
Fascinating.
Um, Hmm.
adrenals, fascia, and
Hmm. Thyroid.
thyroid are considered
Yeah. So like,
in Chinese medicine as in alignment with each other.
yes, yes.
Wow.
Because it's all about connective tissue, right?
Mm,
So the thyroid is the motor that drives our metabolism. The
mm,
adrenals are the motor that drives our actual energy with cortisol, and the fascia is the thing that holds our skeletal structure like all in alignment, right? And
mm,
so it like the triple burner's energy is all about connection, which is very big in sort of like fire element energy, right? Like humans have been gathering around fires for millennia, and like think of that sort of energy that like I'm drawn to a fire that is healthy.
mm,
And then there's the small intestine, which is the sorter of the body. It's the part of the body that says, this is good for me and this is shit. And I'm going to let the shit go. And I'm going to take in the nourishment from the outside world and bring it into my body and use that to fuel my, not just my body, but my soul and my purpose.
mm,
Um, and so when you are talking about like the conditions need to be right for a fire to start, I think that is kind of the energy that we're going into this lunar cycle with.
mm,
What conditions can be set up correctly so that when you go into, that yin fire sheep year, where you can actually kind of slow down and like become more intentional with what your heart's purpose is,
mm,
you have all those conditions set. You've done the drying out of the firewood, you have sort of set aside the right kindling, you've made sure that your hearth, you know I need to get my fireplace checked before I do another fire. um, and like just making sure that like everything is in alignment and correct before you actually like sort of like light that big
mhm,
heart fire,
mm,
is kind of the energy that is coming forth in this year, just thinking about like yang fire.
mm.
um, so yeah, I think you've picked up on some really really beautiful themes just in this two-word phrase of fierce freedom.
Mm. And it's
So
requiring actually a lot of stillness because I think a lot of people think of yang as masculine and yin as feminine. And they say
mhm,
masculine means you're moving, you're active, and feminine means you're still.
mhm,
And I think that's a little bit misleading and kind of one dimensional because in this moment, my health is kind of like you need to stand still
mhm,
because to activate this fire requires you to be extremely present, careful, and make sure all the conditions are right before you
mhm,
ignite. You can't light a
mhm,
fire
mhm.
if you're running or
Yeah,
moving. It actually
yeah,
requires stillness.
yeah.
And, same with the horse who's standing still, they can be in their yang energy
Hmm.
when they're
Hmm.
resolutely tied to the spot. They can
Yeah,
be very strong
yeah,
about that and
yeah.
bright in that, not dark or
Hmm.
hidden or, you know, you know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, I think that what you're speaking to, which is so, so important for people to understand, is yin yang energies are not black and white. It's very, very nuanced. And depending on what your intentions are, your action also needs to be as nuanced. And so, you know that I have a very fiery horse. Um, Coco is my fire boy. He can get really big. He can get violent at times. He can be a wildfire. He can also just be like this, like still,
Mm,
beautiful little, like his heart is just so massive. Like I'd feel his heart like the second I walk into my barn. Um, but what I have learned with Coco, I think that a lot of traditional horse people would see that fire and say, I'm going to get bigger than that fire to overpower his fire.
mm-hmm,
And our mantra, my husband and I, our mantra with him has been, what is the minimum effective dose for him?
mm-hmm,
And he responds so much better. It's still action,
mm,
right? It's still like I'm placing my hand on a part of his body, asking him to move his body. But, even my husband found like an even more nuanced, gentle way to hold, where I was sort of going in when I was asking him to like move his butt away from me. I would go in with sort of like gentle but claw hands still.
mm,
And I watched my husband work with him the other day, and he went in with like just the softest palm. And Coco responded beautifully to that.
Mm.
And so I think that I want to sort of like piggyback on what you're saying is like just because we think about fire as being, it's like yang energy, but then also the most young element of all the elements. And so people think like, oh my gosh, action, action, action. That's not the case, right? For some people, it's going to require a little bit more nuance. For some energies, it's going to require that like soft palm to the haunches rather than like a soft claw to the haunches. Or, I really have found, especially with your guidance, Lucky, that the approach does not have to be let's overpower this
Fire with
big
fire.
fierce. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right.
It just creates more fire. Like he gets, I mean, you saw him on our last lesson that I had with you. He can get very, very big. And that was
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, I've seen him get bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I've just learned, okay, like I'm not going to fight fire with fire.
Yeah. And not all fires need to be extinguished. In fact, a lot of fires are necessary for heat, for life, for sustenance. And a lot of fires are finicky and require constant tending and nurturance in order for them to
Mm-hmm.
maintain. You need to constantly
Yeah.
stoke the fire, add fuel, move the fuel around, add more fuel, source more fuel. I mean, not all fires are robust in that way. They can be
Mm-hmm.
fragile too,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
necessary to maintain. I would like to invite you to come and learn with me inside the School. This is a low-cost, high-value, flexible membership for horse people who want more than just quick fixes and louder answers. Inside, you will find a growing video library, a thoughtful off-social media discussion space, and live coaching calls with myself and often with my team, all designed to help you get to the heart of what's really happening in your horsemanship. This is not about following a method. It's about building clarity, skill, and confidence with the horses always placed as the first priority. If you're looking for a steady place to learn, reflect, and progress your practical skills without force of horses or overwhelm of yourself, I hope you will come and feel at home with us in the School. You can find the sign up by the link in the show notes, or you can visit emotionalhorsemanship.com and navigate to the School sign up.
Yeah. And Coco being a young horse, like I feel like my role in his life in this moment is to nurture that fire rather than to shut it down. And how can we create a healthy fire so that we have this safe relationship between the two of us? Because I also want my body to be safe in the presence of my beautiful fire horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing for time, by the way?
I've got about an hour.
Oh, perfect. Great. So we're kind of talking about it already, but what were people taught to miss about the lunar calendar, about the fire element, about the horse as an element? What were people taught to miss, or what do people typically miss about this that we're discussing?
If I could just distill it down, I think we're taught to miss our relationship with our living and non-living kin. I live in relationship with land. I have 10 acres that we are planning to build our forever home on. Watching your feed on Instagram is sometimes just this like big breath of fresh air because I think you are in conversation with the different elements, with the weather, with all of the creatures that live, plants, animals, humans, in relationship with that land. And I think that that's what we're missing when we don't pay attention to nature. And I get a little bit angry when I think about what we've lost in our modern world for the sake of unhealthy fire, for the sake of unhealthy productivity. Um, you know, January 1st comes around and people are like, New Year, new me, and I've got to lose all this weight and all these resolutions. And to me, it's like, well, what is the weather outside? And I'm not talking about just like the literal weather outside, but like when we are tuned into, at least for me, the Taoist lunar calendar, to me it's like a bit of like a weather watch,
Mm.
because it shows me what is going to be easy this year and what's going to be challenging this year.
Mm.
You know, like if I were to try to plant crops outside right now, it is like there's a bit of snow on the ground. It just wouldn't do well. And so I can't expect crops to do well in the middle of, at the time that we're recording this, it's the end of January here. But, give me 5 months and the crops are gonna come up just fine. Um, it's the same thing. It's just a different and longer cycle. It's a 60-year cycle with the lunar calendar.
Mm.
And so when we're dealing with a cosmic sort of like weather type energy that is 60 years long, as humans, we don't fully understand it because we can't zoom out that far. At
Mhm.
least it's harder for us to zoom out that far. We can
Mm.
think about a year, but like that's sort of how I think about the lunar calendar. Is we're in the middle of a 60-year cycle,
Mm.
and what is going to be easy for me to plant, and what is going to be easy for me to do, and what is going to be easy for me to try to cultivate this year.
Mm.
Because I'm not going to try to, um, I don't know, like when I think about Young Fire Year, that is not necessarily the year to get super cozy and like get in my like jammies and like not leave the house. Like
No.
it is about relationship building. It is about getting clear on what I'm sorting through. It is about creating clear intentions. It's about acting on some of those clear intentions. Um, that is what's going to be ripe this year. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was a
Mm.
long-winded answer to what
No,
are
I
we
love
missing?
long-winded
We're
answers.
missing a
So
lot.
it's great. What I think lunar calendar, Eastern Eastern cultures do really well. Asian cultures do really well is understanding the importance of ancestral lineage. And Western society doesn't do so great at understanding the importance of ancestral lineage. Like, what's that? People are dead, and you know, and that's it.
Mhm.
And I think I had a call with a group of students last night, and a new student says, I'm not a horse person, or I'm a new horse person, or something. And I stopped them and I said, "You are a horse person. It's just skipped a couple of generations due to no fault of your own. We are all descended from horse people because horses used to be ubiquitous in our society. They used to
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
everywhere, and you used to be able to reach your arm out in front of you and touch a horse almost everywhere you went.
Mhm.
And all human beings are descended from horse people of different levels, but even the person who never trained a horse would have access to horses 100 years ago.
Mhm.
Even a person who never fed a horse or cared for a horse had access to them, was exposed to them, would pass them constantly on the street, catch eye with them, be in their vicinity all the time. We're all horse people. It just skipped a couple of generations in the 20th century. And I said that to invite this wonderful person to step into that and realize that there's epigenetic intelligence at her body, in her body, and at a cellular level that will help inform decisions now with this horse that's in front of you if we allow that stillness and that listening to step forward, that there's an ancestral DNA coded level of horse sense in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to see more people who have been squashed by horse culture, being called amateurs in the pejorative, or being labeled as beginners in the pejorative, and patronized by people who have had the privilege to have access to horses all their lives, condescended upon because someone had access to uninterrupted equestrian lineage throughout the 20th century and others didn't. And now that they've chosen to return, their choice to return was more intentional than someone's ability to be born into an uninterrupted line. Maybe we could say, at least at a human level, it required intentional movement and real logistical energy and power to move in the direction of horses if you were not born into horses. And I'd like to see that kind of take up more space and be respected better by service providers and by the industry, and taken seriously, that people who are coming fresh into this in this lifetime, but not from all lifetimes, have wisdom too, that everyone can benefit from, as I've said to you many times. And that's another way for me to kind of understand the fire horse, is a little bit that radical freedom to step into what's yours and the conditions that have been laid down for you, to step into it and actually be actionable and accountable to that what's been built for us. The EH School is a quiet place in a loud industry. It is a low-cost, high-value membership that I've created where horse people can come and slow down, think clearly, and build real skill with horses at the center. We have an expansive, already very deep video library, an off-social media discussion space, and live calls with myself, where you'll get direct support that feels, I hope, steady, practical, refreshingly human, and often really fun. This is not a system that we are creating for you to obey, but a craft that we want to help you practice it. Come and join the Emotional Horsemanship School, the EH School, and you can find the link in the show notes of this episode.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't stumble into horses. It was years of dreaming and planning and making intentional movements, and even purchasing our property was very much with horses at the core of its structure. I'm the crazy person who adopted horses before I had land, and then had to quickly find land because I fell in love with my two horses. So I think that what you're speaking to, I'm going to say this in a very unpolished way. So I hope people don't crawl down my throat for this, but I think that what we have now in the horse world is kind of what I was speaking to earlier, of productivity for productivity's sake. You need to exploit yourself, exploit your body, exploit the resources around you, exploit the people around you in order to gain this other functionality. And that was what I thought horse world was. And so as much as I loved horses, I know nervous systems and have known nervous systems my whole life. And that just didn't feel like a place where my nervous system could feel safe in that kind of world. And so it's interesting because when I talk to people who are not into horses and I explain to them, these are the things that I don't do that are just so commonplace, they will say, I can't believe that happens in the horse world.
Right.
So we all have this inner knowing of what is okay and what's not okay. And we have relinquished it in order to create, I don't know,
A false
to
narrative.
achieve.
A
Yeah,
false
yeah,
narrative about what horses are.
yeah.
Which this actually brings me to this sort of second loose structure, right? Because I'm working the podcast this year according to a soft structure that we can be flexible with. And the first part's a little bit like, what are we missing? And the
Mm,
second part is, well, if we're missing something, what fills that space
hmm.
that we missed? And I think it's important to understand that we're calling for responsibility. We're calling for people's ability to respond to
Hmm.
issues without needing to blame, point finger, or create collapses in people or defensiveness in people. We just don't need to be doing that because that's anathema to the actual responsibility component. When we defend, we're not taking action. When we collapse, we're not taking action. And I think you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. This productivity for productivity's sake, it's a tired and played out playbook.
Hmm.
I think it's exhausted itself. It's like that game on the old Nokia phone, Snake, that I used to play, waiting for a train as a teenager. Eventually, you get so good at the game that the snake gets so long that there's no space on the screen anymore, and the snake eats its own tail. And I think that's a
Yeah.
little bit what we're seeing with this hyper productivity culture. So, to be more specific, it can be at a macro scale, so extremely large breeding operations, breeding hundreds of horses, and there are just not hundreds of homes for these horses. Or doing volumes of colt starting, large volumes of colt starting for which homes, how many people are buying them,
Hmm. Hmm.
down to a micro level. So people looking for a lot out of individual horses rather than
Yeah.
spreading it appropriately across a few. We have one horse that has the whole world on its shoulders and the apple of their owner's eye, and all of the intention of that horse person's horse dream is now living alive in only that horse. And that is a more gentle intention, but the impact is it can still dominate that horse in a way
Hmm.
that is impactful on that horse. And that's really difficult to talk about. But it really matters that we do talk
Yeah.
about it. It really
Yeah.
matters that we are able to talk about it again to create responsibility without blame, if we can,
Yeah.
because it's normal that this will
Hmm.
happen to people who care very deeply about
Yeah.
horses. We will want a lot out of an individual horse. If someone is running a breeding operation, it's normal that they would want to breed a lot of nice horses,
Hmm.
right? If you believe in your program, it's really easy to want to breed a lot of nice horses. But then again, it takes a lot of strength and fire to pump the brakes, stand still, and say, well, am I actually extracting more than what
Yeah.
is sustainable right now,
Yeah.
sustainable from my community? Can my community sustain the number of horses I am producing? Can my horse sustain the number of demands and needs that I'm placing upon them, even if they're placed gently? Can my horse
Yeah.
actually sustain them? And I try to be really clear about this and compassionate about this if I can, you know.
Yeah.
And there are a few things I don't spare compassion for: outright abuse, clear cut, outright violence. That I don't have much patience or compassion for. But again, I think that point of view to call out outright abuse, I think we've played out that playbook too. People who do engage in extreme abuse, so just straight up beatings of horses, for example, that some people are doing. The more we talk about that, the more airtime it gets. It's had its airtime. We know it's there.
Hmm.
People are going to continue to do it, sadly. And I
Hmm.
don't think we're helping by giving it more airtime or attention.
Yeah.
I'd rather speak to aspects of our community that are salvageable. And I
Yeah.
believe responsible breeding, for example, responsible colt starting, and responsible individual ownership of an individual horse is all extremely salvageable and workable.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think I think something that was coming to mind as you were speaking is, you know, being for myself, like being in relationship with this like 60-year cycle
Mm,
gives me a different perspective on time, and I
mm,
have a different relationship to patience. So I've spoken about her on a previous episode with you, but I had a trainer who was working out of my barn, and she was starting 2-year-old colts, riding them, riding them, in my opinion, pretty hard. Um, and I look at my horses who are now going to turn 3, and I'm like, I can't imagine being on that body. It is still changing on a weekly, monthly basis. Like I go in my barn and I'm like, Coco, like where where did you get that muscle from? And like they're just developing still. And so like when we think about appropriateness and cycles, and I have the patience to say, if I do start my horses, they're not going to get started until their bone structure is fully healthy and solidified, and I know that they can handle the weight of a human being on their back
mm,
and handle that for a long term, you know, you know, longer time. It changes what you do in the immediacy. It changes the like need to commodify a horse's existence, because not to sugarcoat it, like horses are not cheap. And so I see that people want to like get bang for their buck. And for me, it's not about like horses are my family. So like I kind of don't care if I never get to ride my horses, but if I do start riding my horses, it's certainly not going to be at the detriment of their health, because I can't be patient with their life cycle and what is appropriate for the season of their life.
mm-hmm,
And so like I think that the Gregorian calendar makes you think that you're resetting every year. And so it rushes things along
mm,
and pushes things forward in a premature way versus, the calendar year that I'm looking at is 60 years long. And so, okay, so what can we accomplish in 60 years?
mm.
You know?
Yes, I agree with you. And um, the acceleration of infant horses into ridden programs is a subject I've discussed here on my own and with other colleagues as well. And I firmly stand against that. And I think to discuss like this structure that I'm kind of playing with, where we kind of talk about what are we missing, and then we talk
Mm-hmm.
about, well, then what do we do instead if we're missing something?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think we're missing about young horses in particular, and what I'd like to see happen in the year of the fire horse, what I'd like to see people step into accountably into, is that starting a horse does not mean you have to sit on their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Starting happens long before we actually mount and
Absolutely.
swing a leg over. Training, when we say starting a horse, that does not mean I have to ride now. And that if I'm not riding, it means I'm not doing anything with the horse. If you choose not to do anything with your horse and the horse is happy, well fed, cared for, beautifully accommodated, then you're doing everything you need to do as a horse person. If that's not enough for some young horses, and it's not, they have a higher capacity demands for interaction and engagement. And from
Mm-hmm.
the age of 2, they're kind of like, come on, let's live, let's do something. I want to learn from you. I'm watching you do things with my buddies, and I want part of that. And that does not have to mean I have to put a leg over their back. There's so much to be done before we do it. And by the time we put a leg over their back, meaning they're bearing weight through their joints, you would like that the joints are strong, and we don't need to sit on them to make their joints and their bones strong. We can put weights on them, for example, but those weights doesn't have to be our full blown body weight. It can be
Right.
lighter weights that are still loading infantile bones, still
Mm-hmm.
loading infantile joints, still loading fusing joints and fusing
Yeah.
bones,
Yeah.
so that we're giving them the benefit of weight bearing exercise without that weight being excessive in the form of us
Right.
And so
Right.
there's so much that can be done in colt starting before we put a leg over at an appropriate age. I think that's what we miss. And I think a lot of people believe that if I'm not riding, then I'm not valid. If I'm not riding, then I'm missing out. If I'm not riding, I'm misusing the horse. If I'm not riding, I'm not even a horse person. I'm not valued by the industry. I'm not seen by my
Right.
colleagues, by my friends. And that's almost like an airborne virus. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I'm really passionate about is helping people feel valid and real as a horse person if you see horses in a more varied context beyond how we can use them for riding. And riding is still a wonderful way to connect with horses when that's appropriate. A wonderful
Absolutely.
way to do awesome, beautiful artwork with an animal, interspecies artwork when that's appropriate. And yeah.
And I think that nuance that you're speaking to goes back to one of the phrases that you said earlier in the conversation, which is radical momentum. Is, to me, radicalism is somebody who can look at the systems that are in place and say, hey, that's not really working. And I'm going to do the radical thing and find a different path forward. And yes, that may include writing. Yes, that may include, whatever it is that people want to do with horses, but we're going to take a different approach. And yet there's momentum behind it, right?
Yes.
Like there's not a stagnation of like, oh, I'm so scared I'm going to like offend my horse, or I'm so scared that I'm going to like, do something harmful to my horse. It's like, no, like action is good and healthy.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that action can look like radical momentum in that you could do something different from what you're seeing in the traditional horse world. And that momentum can still be forward moving, but it doesn't have to be a sprint. It can just be a leisurely walk towards that destination with lots of different paths that come off of it and lots of different areas that you can explore, because you're moving slow enough that you can see those different paths. You're not just like zooming past it and then like, not even seeing those opportunities along the way.
Right. It's like, did we even read The Tortoise and the Hare growing up? Did we even learn from Aesop's fables? I was on a mini break, a holiday with friends of mine last year. And one of my friends is a former client, now very, very close friend. And she was there with her husband, and her husband's also now a friend. And anyway, we're having dinner, and her husband, hi, Matt, if you're listening, he said, Lockie, I've been wanting to talk to you about this for ages. He's like, do you consider your work anarchistic, like anarchy in its conception? And initially I bristled at that. I was like, what, me? Anarchy? No, I'm not chaotic. I'm not organized. He's like, no. Like anarchy essentially, and I might get an irate email saying, I'm a doctorate in anarchy and you're not describing it properly, but here, let me hazard a guess. Anarchy is a little bit about dismantling current systems. And if that's a definition for anarchy, then yes, I'm an anarchist, because in the horse world, dismantling current systems means that extending your runway with a horse before you get to have fun on their body is something that requires dismantling of a system that tells you to use the horse sooner rather than later. And if that's anarchy, if taking your time is considered anarchistic, then yes, if not hitting a horse and calling that boundaries is essentially dismantling a system, and that is now anarchy, then yes, I'm an anarchist. If calling out incongruent descriptions for the tools that we use ubiquitously in horse training requires the dismantling of a system that supports those tools, then yes, I'm an anarchist. So I kind of agreed with him at a level from a pure definition of anarchy, but at a popularist definition of anarchy, in the horse world, anarchy looks like a picnic on a sunny day with your friends and the horse is having a lovely time and enjoying your craft together with them in a quiet and unassuming way. whereas the current system looks like a lot of stress and a lot of problems that the horses are bearing
Exploitation.
in their bodies, in their minds,
Mm-hmm.
in their hearts, and a lot of reckoning. That a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are worried about the reckoning because too many voices that have called for that reckoning have done it through blame rather than responsibility, and are looking for collapse in people and
Mm-hmm.
defensiveness rather than accountability, listening, and responsibility.
Yeah.
And I guess I've contributed to that too sometimes through youthful exuberance alone. But I'm trying to work on that, which kind of brings me to this like not last, but like this next kind of piece I want to discuss is what's the other side of all of this, entering the year of the fire horse
Mm.
and thinking about the broader connections to ourselves, to our health, to the horse world, to our relationships. What changes when we get out of the way, when we stop trying to fill the space, but just step out of the way? What changes?
I don't know that we necessarily need to step out of the way. I
Mm,
think that we need to be intentional about the space that we take up.
mm. So
So
that's
if
the
I think
change.
about, okay,
Yeah.
that's the
So
change.
so
Yeah.
that's the change is I am no longer the obstacle, but also I'm not self-absolving. I'm not removing myself. I'm stepping into
Yeah.
it.
Because I don't want, I mean, I love the community that I've met through you. Like
Mm,
some of my, like one of my dearest friends, Tora, is somebody that I speak to almost daily. And
mm.
like,
Love Torah,
like
by
I
the way.
love, yeah,
Love Torah.
I
Hi, if you're listening.
love, I love how much space she takes up in my life. Like I don't want her
Yes.
to absolve the space that she takes up in my life. And I
Right.
feel the way about the broader emotional horsemanship community is like I want us to be intentional about the space that we take up. And this is the small intestine sorting, right? And I
Mm,
think you did a post about this recently about how do you interact with social media.
mm,
Like hey, like when you feed the algorithm and you keep like rage baiting the algorithm's going to keep showing you stuff, right?
mm-hmm,
So, can we be intentional about stepping away from those kinds of fights?
mm,
Can we be really clear about the kinds of conversations that we want to have?
mm-hmm,
Are there, you know, are there ways in which we can have this like rebellious vitality, the radical momentum moving forward, that uncontrolled spirit, the fierce freedom that you speak of, like, can that all be part of how we take up space
mm,
in this world and like not be apologetic about who we are as horse people? And that's something that I've had to learn over repeated um, compliments from you
mm,
is like, hey, like I'm owning that I am good at nervous systems. Like I can own that. You
mm-hmm,
know, I'm a nervous system nerd, and people and animals feel comfortable around me generally because I have a settled nervous system. So, like, I can own that and step into it and not absolve myself and pull myself back because somebody says, "Oh, you've only had horses for 4 years," you
mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And you can welcome others into your life from that resonance.
mhm,
Tora, you
mhm,
mentioned, is a friend of yours. She's been on the podcast too. She runs a business called Cosmic Heartline. She's a death doula for people and their animals. A
mhm,
really, really important work, helping people help their horses pass. And she's got qualifications and experience and awareness and skills and talent. Anyway, I was on holiday in California recently, and here's Tora. She's someone who showed up at my first clinic ever, and we connected, and she's been a client for ages, and now she's a friend, and she takes up space in my life too. And she's unapologetic. There she is,
mhm.
driving up the driveway in her Subaru, and I said, "Of course you drive a Subaru, Tora. Of course you do. Of course you do." And we went and got breakfast and then went for a walk in the redwoods together, and just the redwood forest wasn't big enough for us to keep talking you know
Mhm,
um And it's so important that when we resonate and we connect, that we take that space with others in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I learned in the year of the wood snake last year, as I literally shed my skin, is
Mm-hmm.
that, hang on a minute, I need to be unapologetic about taking up space and the people in my life that I want to take up space with. I need to be really forward thinking about that and really step into that and not wait and not hide anymore and not try to remove myself or treat myself like I'm a burden or an obstacle. Stop that. And trust that whatever's not in alignment will just fall away. I guess I kind of want people to feel more capable and less overwhelmed, more capable and less overwhelmed, more connected and less isolated. In the year of the fire horse, that's what I'd like to see people move into. And it turns out to feel more connected, to be more connected and less isolated is an intentional choice we have to make.
Yeah. And I'll say too that, like, as we're speaking about like space and the energy of like taking up space, holding space, all that, the year of the wood snake was a very big year for shedding. I mean, I saw you shed many, many layers of relationship and business and what's not in alignment for you, just like everything. You were wearing 20 coats and here we
now
go.
I'm naked. Now I'm naked. Yeah, naked
same.
now.
I had a very, very similar year. I had to go very internal and I lost my father and then I also lost my father-in-law, and like there were so many layers of shedding of my own identity and what do I hold true and valuable in my life. Like it was just a whole snake year just came at me, right? Fire shedding is slightly different. It's not like you have to like rip your literal skin off. It is like you get to stand back and say, this is for me and that's not for me.
Yeah. And then it will burn out what needs to burn out. Yeah.
But if you did shedding right in the wood snake, that means that you have space to actually say yes. If you think about the small intestine, like it's a spacious organ. And it takes up a lot of space in the body. And so, like, the small intestine's medicine is also to take up a lot of space and say, hey, I have capacity to take on more. That's if you've done the shedding correctly, right? And so we still have a little bit of time here. Like, again, it's not like black and white. It's not like February, I think it falls on the 17th or the 16th this year.
17th of February, 2026. We're changing.
Yeah. And so it's not like February 17th, 2026 at like midnight, like we're just flipping the switch. It is like, it's like the season, right? So like you still have a bit of time of like wood snake energy to like lean into it and be like, okay, so is there any more layers of shedding that need to happen? Lockie, I'm going to say like, no for you.
Like I'm raw. I'm raw. I'm naked. I'm down to the nub. I'm ready. I'm ready for some heat. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just inviting people who
haven't shed.
Maybe resisted the shed or haven't shed or haven't had opportunities to shed. There may be an opportunity here, like going into the beginning of the year of the fire horse.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I shed a lot last year, and there were aspects of that shedding that felt extremely painful initially. And then what followed immediately after was the comfort of the expansion that happens when you give yourself more room. And I think that's what we're all a little bit afraid of sometimes, and what we sometimes miss is that initial discomfort. We've been trained to see discomfort as disease or as a problem rather than as a medicine and a solution in and of itself. Pain too, to a certain degree, is there to inform pain, pay attention inside now, what's going on. And it kind of holds you up and has you reflect even in spite of ourselves. Yeah, definitely inviting people to reflect a little bit more about what they need to let go as we go into this transition and how we can move forward, because I think that's what it's going to take to move the needle for, if not ourselves, then at least for our horses. Well, especially for the horses, which is my primary focus, is putting the horse first, right? How can we move the needle forward? How can we move the needle forward? How can we advance? How can we not rest on our laurels? How can we not repeat the mistakes of the past and yet not throw the baby out with the bathwater? This is the dialogue that I exchange in with myself and with my team and with my clients constantly. We're engaging in that. And you approached me sort of towards the second third of last Gregorian year, so 2025. He said, Lockie, I've got this idea percolating and I just want to chew the fat with you on it. And I've done that for a few friends of mine. Alexa Linton is another one that comes to mind. When she was preparing her new platform, she and I used to have like a few like languid discussions about it. And such is one that we had. So I'd like to give you an opportunity just to chat about your new project and ways people can get involved at this early stage of it.
Yeah. So I've been chewing on this project. I reached out to you end of last year, but I've been chewing on this project for 2 years now. It's one of the pieces that came forth while I was supporting my dad. So my dad had a stroke a couple of years ago, and then he lived in a hospital in Korea for about 6 months. And I moved out to Korea and rented an apartment and just helped with his care for about 6 months. And that was like a deep layer of shedding, because previous to that, I had a life coaching and spiritual business mentorship business. It was like upward trajectory, like all green lights. And then I basically had to just like stop and be like, this is much more important, and I have to like slow things down to be with my dad. And it was 6 months of like deep meditation. There was a lot of doing, but it was also like my life had never been that slow in my life. Like there was long stretches of time where we were just being with each other, and it has made me really, really consider like what is valuable and what do I want to leave as a lasting mark in this life. You know, now sitting on the other side of my father's death, he's made such a lasting impression on me and our family. And he was such a like introverted, like he was a Year of the Dragon guy, and he was just fiercely protective of his family, our family of four. And that is what he came into this life to do, and that is what he left in terms of an impression on our lives. I have a little bit more extrovertedness than my dad does. And one of the things that I feel really called to, very similarly to you, Lockie, is I feel passionate about how we are in relationship with horses and how we're in relationship with land. And I want to create a platform around that. I'm not coming at this as an expert. I'm coming at this from a literary lens. I'm coming at this from a we're all on the same level sort of a space, which
Democracy.
is what, yeah, this is what you've sort of really put into me, is like, hey, like, you know, you only have a couple years into the horse world, but, you know, you have just as valid of a voice as somebody who's been in it for 20, 25 years.
Yes.
And I want to create an actual space that nurtures that. So I am creating a magazine, hypothetically a podcast that goes with it. I used to have a podcast when I had my coaching business.
Yes.
And I love podcasting. It's why I like put out on social media the other day. I was like, I need to get back in front of a microphone, and I'm not ready to like start my podcast up yet. But so I want to create a magazine. I want it to in some part be in print. Um, but for me, the most important part is community. Like, how do we create a community space where people can share their voices, their lessons, um, and yeah, have that be sort of this like web that we can weave with Lockie's community. I'm also friends with Alexa and um, with Tora's community. Like, can we bridge all of these beautiful communities that you guys have all built individually and find a safe landing place that we can all sort of hang out and play through beautiful writing? Because I love writing. Good writing is like what gets me all excited. And so, yeah, that project is called Interbeing Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just put up like a very basic website. All that's on it is a Google form that is a survey. And, if we're thinking about alignment with the elements, this is my small intestine saying, hey, like, let's sort through what people want. Like, let's listen to what people want to hear and what they would like. And so this is your chance to give me some feedback on if there's a magazine and a podcast about horse first, horse people. What would you want to hear? What kind of voices would you want to be hearing from? What kind of stories do you want to be reading? What kind of conversations do you want to be having? And it's all about the relational dynamics between human, horse, and land. So
I
yeah,
love it. Yeah. And as I understand it, you'd like to move it not just horses, but animals, livestock, gardening, food growing, land management, farm construction, farm ideas, permaculture ideas, non-permaculture ideas, and kind of expand the view, widen the view. And it's for people who might have been multi-generational landowners and landholders and have always had that point of view, and people who had that skip a generation and are returning to it, as we're seeing a large rise of in our generation. People returning to land, a tree change, a sea change, moving out there. And sometimes we have access to information, sometimes we don't. And what I know for sure is that through community, we supercharge our ability to have one shared nervous system, one shared brain, and we can pool resources. And if I don't know how to do horse safe fencing, someone else will. What's an affordable way to get mud remediation done? What's a good solution for collecting water on my land? What's a good solution for removing or helping change the behavior of water on my land? Or how do I help my horses live in harmony with my pasture without ruining my topsoil and without destroying my pastures? What's good pasture management in this part of the world, and then again in this part of the world? I think these are broader conversations that can be intertwined together with discussions around horsemanship and training and horse care, as well as community building. That is so much more than just horsemanship now. It's a whole lifestyle where horses are at the center for a lot of us, but not for everyone.
Yeah.
And a lot of horse people get really interested in, like, oh my God, this resource called poo that's never ending.
Dude, I can nerd out about poo.
What do I do?
We should do an entire episode about poo, Lucky.
I've got neighbors who want my poo, and they can't get it because I'm too busy using it. It is a building. It is I'm literally using my manure to build spaces for my horses that are above the waterline in the wintertime on what would otherwise be a flood meadow. And because it's the cheapest way to fill in land, to create new reclaimed land, is literally with manure. It's slow. You don't get you can't just order 40 trucks and have it be done in an afternoon. You have to think about where you want it, where you want the land to change. And then the horses actually build soil for you, create new soil for you.
Yeah.
out of things that came from soil. It's so
Yeah.
cool. And then like
Yeah.
I've watched how the water table changes. I've watched how, yeah,
Yeah.
this is where we want to create a landing pad. And there was also something I remember we discussed that made you giggle, and I've still thought about it, is like, what if
Oh, I
one
don't
day
remember.
this magazine became got some really good traction and got some real
Oh,
good
yes.
success behind it, enough to the point that we had some advertisers join us.
Hmm. Hmm.
Imagine we have a tack company say, your magazine's got some weight, let's do some advertising. And I thought it would be so fun to encourage tack advertisers, let's imagine people who are selling us halters, to allow us to do a photo shoot where the
Hmm.
halters are dirty and the horses have shit stains, because
Yeah.
that's what horses actually look like. Let's let the horses wear the halter, roll in the halter, stand up, be covered in sand, photograph. There's the advertisement for the halter, because that speaks to people like us that aren't trying
Yeah.
to pretend horses are
Just
anything other.
pristine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who aren't trying to fight nature. We're trying to live with it. And like, yeah, we can like not want our horses to look like crap or be unkempt or uncareful. They can look good too, but to celebrate the truth
Hmm.
a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And for me, like, I don't know if it'll, I'm
get to
open
that
to the
point.
magazine idea, like, of evolving. I'm definitely open to the idea of advertisers. I'm always asking our community. I was in one of Lockie's groups, and I'm always asking them, like, what do you guys get for supplements? And like, products are an important part of making sure that our horses are healthy and safe. So I'm open to that. I don't know that I like, for me it feels very central to horses human land, like that triangle
Mm,
relationship. I do plan on having other animals on my property, but like it's such a central focus of my day to day to make sure that my horses are happy and healthy, that like I want to really nurture that.
hmm.
um and yeah, I don't know where this project is taking me. I do have my cousin who has spent her entire career designing magazines. She's going to be designing the magazine for me. We are I'm potentially gonna bring on investors. So that is also in the works. But in this moment in time, it is about, hey, is there a need? If there is a need, please come onto the website and
Yeah,
let me know. Like, share your voice,
yep,
because this isn't just my project. I want it to be a community run project.
that's
And
right.
I really want to make sure that I'm listening to people and hearing what it is that they want. And quite frankly, it's like a resource that I would have just been super pumped about.
Mm,
Um, you know, and so I'm trying to bring all that forward. And I also want to make sure that we are bridging the yin and yang of horse care and
mm,
horse stewardship,
mm.
of like, yes, let's talk about, pasture management, but like zoom out a little bit. Like, what does that mean to you on a spiritual level?
Mm.
What does that feel like in your body to land in a pasture that you have managed and stewarded with a lot of intentionality, instead of just letting the horses just run over it and destroy it, right? And so, like, there's the how, but then there's also the why, and then the why does that feed your spirit aspect of it. So like, I
Mm.
want stories that are not just like how to's. I want stories that are how to, and why do we do it in this way that is different from how
It's been
we've.
done.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally am on board. And I also love the idea that the writers and contributors can range from, let's say, people with a platform, with experts and known people, and also
Hmm.
someone who doesn't have a platform, who has horses and a voice, right
Yeah.
next to each other, published in the same place, with information, with experience, with questioning, and with dignity and respect. Because a lot of
Yeah.
magazines want to leverage whatever form of celebrity they can, and podcast is
Yeah.
often built on that too. It's like the more famous
Yeah.
guest you get,
Yeah.
then like the more eyes you get, and society is built that way. But also,
Yeah.
I'd love to give room and space, because some of the most interesting people I know don't have a platform,
Yeah.
and yet have so much to share. And I think we're losing a lot by not letting that be shared, the way that horses can rebuild land rather than break it down.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's a meritocracy. Like if you've got good writing and you've got a good concept and you can put that forth in such a way that like is written beautifully and communicates what that concept is, like I don't care if you've got 0 followers on Instagram or thousands of followers on Instagram, like I will give the same space to either.
Love it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so the link to that new website where you're gathering data will be in the description of this episode. People can find it there. And if we're listening far ahead in the future, hopefully it'll just be a link to the website with the magazine like up and running with the editions all published.
Yeah. If you're listening to this 2 years from now,
yes,
that's where the magazine will live. It's interbeingmag.com.
Love it. So just rounding out for today around discussions of the Fire Horse, we don't have to make it like a top 3 things, but what are some things for some people to keep in mind as they're moving into this new lunar calendar year? Kat.
Just to summarize some of the concepts that Lockie and I talked about, I think keeping the concept of sorting in mind, like the energy of the small intestine, and then keeping the concept of connection in mind, the energy of the triple burner, and understanding that, sorry, my cat is playing with a toy. So you're going to hear that on the podcast.
I don't actually. You've got good sound canceling back there. Yeah.
And if we're sort of zooming out just a little bit, right? Sorting and connection is what's going to lead into that yin fire year that's happening in the following year. And the yin fire year is all about heart and purpose and like what is your like Tao, what is what you are meant to do in this world. Like it's a big year for that. So this is the like pre-work. This is the homework to get to that beautiful energy of yin fire year next year.
Time to get the ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Line up the chessboard.
Absolutely. So,
yeah. Thanks, Kat. That was fun.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me on.
And if people want to find you on social media otherwise, because you are someone people can follow, are you still doing that?
I am. I'm moving more to Substack because I'm playing more with the like long form content stuff. But on Instagram, I'm Kat HoSoo Lee, and that is the same on Substack, I believe.
Okay.
Might have to check that, but there's a link on my Instagram if you want to go check out my Substack.
Cool. We'll put those links in the description of this episode also.
Cool.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you very much, Lockie.
Thanks for being here.